In the hallowed halls of the Senate Judiciary Committee, where the line between justice and politics blurs under the weight of national trauma, Senator Amy Klobuchar delivered a pointed, unflinching question that cut to the heart of America's fraying trust in its institutions. Did President Trump's explosive Truth Social post, naming Attorney General Pam Bondi and urging her to unleash criminal charges on political foes, constitute a directive to bend the Justice Department to the White House's will? The exchange, unfolding amid fresh grief from Minnesota's bloodshed and broader debates on gun violence, laid bare the high stakes of an administration accused of eroding the DOJ's independence, threatening the one-tier justice system Bondi herself once vowed to restore. As Klobuchar invoked the president's own words, "We can't delay any longer, Pam," the room tensed, highlighting a presidency that, in its transparency, borders on coercion and a confirmation-era promise now tested by firings, indictments, and the specter of weaponized law.
Good morning. I'm going to start on a different subject.
Good morning.
On behalf of families in my state. And I wanted to thank the FBI and the local justice officials in Minnesota, the U.S. Attorney's Office, for the work that they did catching the murder, in the horrific murder of my friend, Speaker Melissa Hortman, and her husband, and the shooting of Senator John Hoffman. Just last month, my state was again shaken to its core when a mass shooter attacked Annunciation Catholic Church in Minnesota, shooting through the stained glass windows, injuring 21 people, including 18 kids, killing little Fletcher, little Harper, an 8 and a 10-year-old, murdering them when they're in mass praying, 12-year-olds protecting 8-year-olds. I know we've spoken about these tragedies, and we both agree that this kind of violence, whether in Minnesota or at a Mormon church in Michigan or the assassination of Charlie Kirk, has no place in our politics or in our democracy. In 2018, after the Parkland shooting, you were Attorney General, and there was a bill called the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Act. And the bill banned bump stocks, enacted red flag laws, and raised the minimum age to purchase a firearm in Florida from 18 to 21. And you actually defended the law in court from a challenge from the NRA. And we know that I'm in favor of an assault weapon ban, period. I look at these bills and I think, does this hurt my Uncle Dick in the deer stand? We have a proud tradition of hunting in Minnesota. I don't think they do. But as I talked to Director Patel, and he told me in the chair you are sitting in right now, that assault weapon ban could prevent future attacks. I talked to him about better background checks, about red flag laws, and then that perhaps we could find common ground on what actually happened in Florida, which would be to at least change the minimum age for purchasing assault weapon, because we've got 18 to 20-year-olds commit gun homicides at over triple the rate of adults 21 years and over, even though that wouldn't helped in Annunciation Church because he was a few years older. She was a few years older. But as you know, the shooter at Parkland was 19 years old, and the shooters in Buffalo and Uvalde were both 18 years old. So given your efforts in Florida, do you agree that at least raising the age for purchasing assault weapons could reduce the number of these shootings?
Senator, first, that's pending litigation, and I can't discuss that at all. The 21 is pending litigation. I cannot discuss
In
that.
Florida?
But if I could go back
I really
the
didn't know
21
this.
age is pending litigation. I can't discuss that. But Senator, back to what you said about what happened in Minnesota, there is no place for that. And I believe I spoke to you after that horrific, those murders. And I'm so sorry that happened. And all of my federal agencies were partnering with state agencies, working hand in hand in Minnesota. What I can tell you about the Second Amendment is this is the most pro-Second Amendment DOJ in American history, as you know. But we want to keep guns, as you said, where they should be, in the hands of law-abiding American citizens, while keeping them out of the hands of criminals and gangs. Since January 20th, the ATF and FBI have seized more
I know
than
you gave these statistics.
30,000
I really
illegal
was,
guns.
I have 10 minutes. and
30,000,
You have
Senator
given these
Klobuchar.
statistics, and I truly appreciate those statistics. But what I was just trying to get at was something where maybe we could find common ground on a bill that you actually defended in court in a state, which Director Patel seemed open to, and that was looking at could we at least raise the age to 21 of the purchase of an assault weapon federally while states look at banning these weapons overall, given these little babies that this gun is used to kill. So we can talk about it later, but that was my question, and you don't want to answer it.
No, it's pending litigation, Senator.
Okay, but your views on this is not pending litigation. So I want to get to the independence of the Justice Department. At your nomination hearing, I specifically asked you to provide assurance to every member of this committee that the Justice Department will only follow the facts and the law, and the White House will play no role in the cases investigated or brought. You stated in response, this was you, politics will not play a part in my decisions. And you also said the Justice Department must be independent and must act independently. Do you believe that you have upheld that commitment?
I absolutely have upheld that commitment, Senator. I pledged that I would end the weaponization also of the Justice Department, and that America would once again have a one-tier system of justice for all. And that is what we are doing in this country.
We saw this with the president directing an investigation prosecution of Chris Krebs, the former head of cybersecurity, Lisa Cook, who is a current governor of the Federal Reserve, Director Comey. And the president, and I know you have said that you will not discuss discussions you've had with the president about Comey. Is that correct? That you won't testify here about that? Because I was going to ask you if you received advice, instruction, or request from anyone at the White House to direct the department to engage in any investigations, prosecutorial actions, including decisions not to investigate or prosecute anyone.
I'm not going to discuss any
Okay.
conversations.
But then how about the Truth Social post on September 20th, 2025, in which the president said, we can't delay any longer, Pam, using your name, not bringing criminal charges, are killing our reputation, his words, and credibility. And then goes on to tell you to prosecute a member of this committee, to prosecute the Attorney General of New York, and to prosecute James Comey. Do you consider that a directive to the Justice Department?
Senator Klobuchar, President Trump is the most transparent president in American history, and I don't think he said anything that he hasn't said for years.
Okay, it has been reported that you initially pushed back against requests by senior Trump administration officials to push out or fire the acting U.S. Attorney in Virginia, Eric Siebert, who's a conservative Republican, who made the decision that that the evidence was not there to prosecute Comey. What made you change your opinion?
I am not going to discuss personnel decisions.
Okay. Is it true that the career prosecutors in the Eastern District of Virginia found that there was insufficient evidence to bring criminal charges against former Director Comey?
I am not going to discuss pending cases because Comey was indicted in the Eastern District of Virginia by, I may point out, one of the most liberal grand juries in the country.
Okay, let's go on to other firings or terminations. Last week, the Justice Department fired at least 2 senior attorneys in the Eastern District of Virginia, including the office's national security chief, Michael Benary. It is reported that his firing came following criticism from a right-wing social media commentator who wrote, "One can only assume he was part of the internal resistance in the Comey indictment." In fact, he did not work on the Comey case. Instead, he was working on pursuing justice for service members killed in Afghanistan. How does firing a 20-year national security prosecutor enhance public safety?
Senator Klobuchar, I'm not going to discuss personnel decisions, but the personnel issue that I'm having right now is that all of my agents, all of my lawyers are working. My agents are on the street working without a paycheck because your party voted to shut down the federal government.
Unfortunately, the House isn't even back here. They're 18 days off the job to even meet with us to come up with a resolution that we would like to discuss with them about saving people's health care. Let's move on to the Antitrust Division. Did you authorize your Chief of Staff to overrule top officials in the Antitrust Division to settle the challenge to the Hewlett-Packard Enterprises Juniper Networks merger?
Senator Gail Slater runs my antitrust unit, and she is doing an excellent job on many, many cases. As you know, that is a pending case.
Okay.
In any merger, just to clarify, in any merger, Senator, there is a deal struck with our office and with the corporations involved, but then that also goes to a court to certify in any merger. In any merger, it's a multi-step process.
Okay, I
and
will
that
ask some
process
further
is still pending,
questions
Senator
about
Klobuchar.
antitrust. I just had one other thing. DOJ can now take the extraordinary step of
Time's
subpoenaing
expired.
journalists. Has the Justice Department issued any subpoenas to journalists under the updated guidance?
Time is expired.
Okay, I'll ask
You
those
may
on the record.
respond.
The hearing, part of an oversight session on the Department of Justice's operations, opened with a somber acknowledgement of recent violence gripping the nation. Klobuchar, speaking on behalf of her Minnesota constituents, extended gratitude to the FBI and local officials for their swift action in apprehending the perpetrators behind the murder of State House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband, as well as the shooting of State Senator John Hoffman. Just weeks prior, her state had endured another devastating attack. A mass shooter firing through the stained glass windows of St. Mary's Catholic Church in St. Paul, injuring 21 worshipers, including 18 children, and claiming the lives of two young siblings, 8-year-old Fletcher and 10-year-old Harbor, who had been shielding their mother during Mass. These little babies, Klobuchar later evoked, their innocence shattered in a place of prayer, underscored the hearing's pivot from mourning to urgent policy reckoning. Klobuchar wove this grief into a broader call for gun reform, drawing on Bondi's record as Florida's Attorney General. In 2018, following the Parkland School massacre, Bondi had defended the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Act in court against an NRA challenge. That law banned bump stocks, enacted red flag provisions, and raised the minimum age to purchase firearms from 18 to 21. Klobuchar, a staunch advocate for an outright assault weapons ban, sought common ground. Could the federal government at least mirror Florida's age hike for assault weapon purchases? She cited FBI Director Patel's endorsement from the very chair Bondi occupied, noting stark statistics: gun homicides by 18 to 20-year-olds triple those of adults over 21, and referenced young shooters in Parkland, 19, Buffalo, 18, and Uvalde, 18. Even if it wouldn't have stopped the St. Mary's gunman, who was older, such a measure could avert future horrors without infringing on traditions like Minnesota's deer hunting. Bondi sidestepped the substance, citing pending litigation on the age 21 rule. "I cannot discuss that," she repeated, pivoting instead to condolences for Minnesota's losses and praise for federal-state partnerships in the investigations. She touted her DOJ as the most pro-Second Amendment in American history, emphasizing seizures of over 30,000 illegal firearms since January 20, 2025, by the ATF and FBI to keep guns from criminals while honoring law-abiding citizens. Klobuchar pressed gently for dialogue. "We can talk about it later." But the exchange revealed a chasm. Bondi's fealty to constitutional rights clashing with Klobuchar's plea for incremental safeguards amid mounting child funerals. The testimony's gravity shifted abruptly to the DOJ's independence, the hearing's core fault line, and the crux of the title's shock truth post. Klobuchar referenced Bondi's nomination hearing assurances. The Justice Department would follow only facts and law, free from White House influence. Politics would play no role. It must act independently. Bondi affirmed she had upheld this, pledging to end the weaponization of justice and restore equity for all Americans. Klobuchar tested that vow with specifics. She cited President Trump's directives for probes into figures like former cybersecurity head Chris Krebs, Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook, and ex-FBI Director James Comey, targets of what she framed as retaliatory overreach. Bondi refused to detail White House conversations, adhering to protocol. Undeterred, Klobuchar zeroed in on Trump's September 20, 2025, Truth Social post, a public missive addressed directly to Bondi. "We can't delay any longer. Pam, bringing criminal charges is killing our reputation and credibility." The post named targets including a Senate committee member, New York Attorney General Letitia James, and Comey, demanding swift action. "Do you consider that a directive to the Justice Department?" Klobuchar asked point blank. Bondi deflected with praise for Trump's transparency, insisting the post echoed sentiments he'd voiced for years. No admission of pressure, no rebuke of interference, just a restatement of the administration's commitment to even-handedness. The senator followed up on reports that Bondi initially resisted calls from Trump aides to oust acting U.S. Attorney Eric Seaboard, a conservative Republican, in Virginia's Eastern District, after Seaboard deemed evidence insufficient to prosecute Comey. What changed her mind? Bondi declined to discuss personal decisions. The litany of controversies mounted. Klobuchar highlighted Comey's recent indictment by a liberal grand jury in that district, despite career prosecutors' findings of inadequate evidence. She then turned to firings. Last week, the DOJ dismissed at least 2 senior Eastern District attorneys, including National Security Chief Michael Bonnier, a 20-year veteran pursuing justice for U.S. service members killed in Afghanistan. Reports linked Bonnier's ouster to criticism from a right-wing social media commentator, who baselessly tied him to internal resistance against the Comey indictment, though Bonnier hadn't touched the case. How does firing a 20-year national security prosecutor enhance public safety? Klobuchar demanded. Bondi demurred on personnel matters, countering with a sharp rebuke. Her agents and lawyers were on the street working without a paycheck due to a government shutdown engineered by the opposition party, which had recessed for 18 days without negotiating on health care protections. The retort shifted blame, but evaded accountability. Klobuchar's final thrust targeted the antitrust division. Had Bondi authorized her chief of staff to overrule top officials and settle the challenge to Hewlett-Packard Enterprises' merger with Juniper Networks? Bondi lauded antitrust chief Gail Slater's work on multiple cases, clarifying that mergers involve multi-step negotiations with courts for certification, another pending matter she couldn't dissect. As time expired, Klobuchar flagged one more concern. Under updated guidelines, had the DOJ issued subpoenas to journalists via senior judge approval? No answer came, but she vowed written follow-ups. The hearing adjourned without seismic outcomes, no concessions from Bondi, no formal rebukes, but its undercurrents rippled with implications. Klobuchar's interrogation exposed fault lines in the Trump administration's second term, a DOJ championing Second Amendment absolutism while dodging reforms that once bore Bondi's stamp, an independence pledge strained by public hectoring from the Oval Office and abrupt personnel purges, antitrust leniency amid merger scrutiny. For families like those in St. Mary's Church or the Hortmans, the session amplified unresolved anguish, violence unchecked by policy, justice questioned by politics. Bondi's steadfast deflections preserved institutional opacity, yet Klobuchar's persistence ensured the questions lingered, a reminder that transparency, when weaponized, can undermine the very democracy it claims to defend. In this arena, where grief meets governance, the true verdict may unfold not in chambers, but in the court of public reckoning.